is something deeply satisfying about watching someone get exactly what they deserve, not in a cruel way, not in a petty way, but in that quiet, slow-burning way where you've been watching a person lie, manipulate, and step on everyone around them, and then finally the world catches up with them. Downton Abbey understood this better than almost any show ever made. It dressed its revenge in silk gloves and served it at the dinner table with a perfectly polished silver spoon. Nobody shouted. Nobody threw punches. The comeuppances in Downton were far more elegant than that, and that is exactly what made them so incredibly satisfying to watch. Over the next few minutes, we are going to walk through the moments in Downton Abbey where karma showed up, sat down, and refused to leave. These are the moments fans still talk about. The moments that made you pause the episode, look at someone next to you, and say, "Did that just happen?" Yes, it did. And it was glorious ** to understand why the comeuppances in Downton Abbey feel so satisfying. You first have to understand the world the show is set in. Downton Abbey takes place in early 20th century England at a time when society was almost mathematically divided. There were people who were born into wealth and title, and there were people who were born to serve them. That was not a suggestion. That was not a preference. That was simply the way the world worked, and almost everyone. And it accepted those rules without question. The grand estate of Downton Abbey sits at the center of all of this. It is beautiful, enormous, and immaculate. The kind of place that looks like it was built to last forever. And in many ways, it was. The Crawley family lives upstairs in that world of candlelit dinners, formal dress codes, and elaborate social rules that would make your head spin. Every meal is an event. Every conversation carries layers of meaning. Every glance across the table can start a war or end a reputation. But underneath all of that polish and perfection, Downton is absolutely full of human beings with very human flaws. There are people scheming for power, people hiding devastating secrets, people protecting themselves at the cost of everyone around them. And the show never lets you forget that no matter how beautiful the chandeliers look, or how perfectly the table is set, the people sitting beneath those chandeliers are complicated, flawed, and sometimes genuinely cruel. That tension is the engine of the entire show. And it is why, when justice finally arrives, it feels like a window being thrown open in a room that has been sealed shut for years. You feel it. You breathe it in, what makes Downton different from other period dramas is the way it treats power. In most shows, the rich, entitled characters simply get away with everything. They bend the rules because they made the rules. They escape consequences because consequences are for other people. It builds those characters up, lets you watch them abuse their position, and then, slowly, deliberately, with extraordinary patience, it dismantles them. Not always loudly, not always in public. But the dismantling happens, and when it does, it is precise. The show has a gift for making you wait just long enough that when the moment of reckoning finally arrives, your satisfaction is almost overwhelming. That is the art of the comeuppance, and nobody practiced that art quite like Julian Fellowes did across 6 seasons of this extraordinary show. Asterisk, Thomas Barrow is the kind of person who walks into a room and immediately starts calculating how he can use everyone in it. From the very first moment he appears on screen, something about him feels off. Not in an obvious cartoonish villain kind of way. Free. There is always a price attached to Thomas being nice to you. There is always something he wants, something he is angling for, something he is quietly setting up behind your back while looking you directly in the eye. That is the genuinely uncomfortable part of watching Thomas Barrow operate inside Downton Abbey. His schemes actually work. He moves through that household like a chess player who has already seen 12 moves ahead, and the people around him keep walking straight into every trap he lays without even realizing. There was a trap at Aldot. He manipulates fellow servants. He plants seeds of doubt between people who trust each other. He whispers the right thing in the right ear at exactly the right moment. When he wants someone gone, he does not push them out the front door. He simply makes their life inside the house uncomfortable enough that leaving starts to feel like their own idea. That is a particular kind of cruelty, the kind that leaves no fingerprints. And Thomas was extraordinarily good at it. For seasons, he operated this way and faced almost no real consequences. Which is precisely why, when the walls finally started, closing in on him, the audience felt every single second of it. The turning point with Thomas is not one single explosion. It is a slow erosion, and that is what makes it so deeply satisfying to watch. Piece by piece, the image he has spent years constructing inside Downton begins to crack. The people he underestimated start to seem clearly. The alliances he thought were solid begin to quietly dissolve. Nobody conspires against him the way he conspired against others. There is a moment in the show where you watch Thomas sitting alone, stripped of his usual armor of confidence, and you realize something genuinely surprising. And Julian Fellowes is smart enough to let you see that without ever asking. You feel the justice of it and the sadness of it at the exact same time. Asterisk, there is a specific type of person who has never truly suffered the consequences of their own personality. They move through life wrapped in the armor of beauty. The world tends to forgive them for everything else. Lady Mary Crawley is that person. She is magnetic. She is razor sharp. She walks into every room like she already owns it, which in most cases she practically does. And she was never shy about using that position to her full advantage. The problem is that somewhere along the way, that awareness curdled into something colder. Something that stopped seeing other people as people and started seeing them as pieces on a board to be moved. No longer convenient. Watch Mary across the early seasons, and you will see a woman who dispenses cruelty the way other people dispense pleasantries, casually, effortlessly, almost without thinking. She cuts her sister Edith down so consistently and with such precision that it stops feeling like sibling rivalry and starts feeling like a habit. A reflex, something Mary does not even fully register as harmful because it has simply become part of how she operates. She dismisses people below her station without a second thought. She makes decisions that affect other people's entire lives, and then moves on to the next thing without carrying even a fraction of the weight of those decisions. She is something more ordinary than that and, in many ways, more damaging. She's a person who is never made to feel the weight of what she does to others, and so she keeps doing it. Asterisk, but Downton Abbey is a patient show, and Lady Mary's reckoning does not come in the form of a single, dramatic confrontation where someone finally tells her exactly who she is. It comes the way all real consequences come in life, which is quietly and from a direction she never thought to guard. Through watching things she assumed were permanent turn out to be fragile. Through standing in rooms where her sharp tongue and perfect posture cannot fix what is broken. The world that Mary built her entire sense of self. A palm begins to shift beneath her feet, and she is completely unprepared for it because she never once considered that it could. There is a particular scene where Mary is forced to sit with the reality of what her coldness has actually cost her, not in abstract terms, not in social currency, and the camera just holds on her face. No dramatic music, no speeches. Just a woman realizing, perhaps for the first time, that being the most formidable person in the room does not make you immune to pain. It just means you have further to fall. That moment is not triumphant. It is not cruel. It is simply true. And truth, when it finally arrives for someone who has spent a lifetime avoiding it, is the most satisfying comeuppance of all. Asterisk here is something that Downton Abbey understood about power that most shows never bother to explore. Power is not always loud. Power is not always a title on a door or a seat at the head of the table, or a meme that makes other people straighten their backs when they hear it. Sometimes power is something far quieter than that. Sometimes power is a person who has been pushed to the absolute edge of what a human being can endure, who's had their dignity stripped away piece by people who assumed they had no recourse, no voice, and no ability to fight back, and who then chooses, in one quiet and completely deliberate moment, to simply refuse. To refuse to be invisible. To refuse to absorb one more injustice with a lowered head and a bitten tongue. To stand completely still and let the truth speak for itself. And when you see it on screen, It stops you cold in a way that no shouting match or dramatic confrontation ever could. The servants of Downton Abbey were written with a depth and care that was genuinely unusual for the genre. In most period dramas, the staff exist in the background. They pour the wine, they press the clothes. They appear briefly and then disappear back into the walls of the house like they were never there. Downton refused to do that. Carson, Bates, Anna, Hughes, Patmore. These were not background characters filling out the scenery. They were fully formed human beings carrying fully formed lives, and the show made absolutely sure you understood that. It made sure you understood what it cost them to serve with grace inside a system that was fundamentally designed to make. And it made sure you understood what it meant when someone from outside that system, or sometimes even from inside it, decided to treat them as less than what they were. John Bates is perhaps the most powerful example of this in the entire run of the show. Here's a man who carries himself with a quiet and unshakable dignity that never wavers regardless of what is thrown at him. He is framed. He's imprisoned. He is dragged through a legal system that was never designed to protect someone in his position. People with far more social standing than him look directly at his face and lie about him without flinching, fully confident that the world will believe them over him simply because of who they are and who he is not. And through all of it, Bates does not break, he does not rage, he does not crumble. He simply holds on to the truth the way a person holds a candle in a very dark room, not because they are certain the darkness will end, but because letting go of the light is simply not something they are willing to do. Watching that kind of quiet endurance go up against the casual cruelty of people who assumed they were untouchable is one of the most gripping dynamics the show ever created. And when justice arrives for Bates, it does not arrive with fanfare. There is no courtroom speech that brings the gallery to its feet. There is no moment where the villain is dramatically unmasked in front of a crowd. The truth simply surfaces, the way truth always eventually does, through patience and time and the fundamental inability of a lie to hold its shape forever. What makes it so profoundly satisfying is not the drama of the resolution. It is the weight of everything that came before it. Every moment he chose dignity over despair. By the time justice finds him, you have been carrying all of that with him, and the release of it feels personal. That is the genius of what Downton Abbey did with its servant characters. It made their victories feel like your victories. It made you understand in a way that went beyond the screen that dignity is not something that can be taken from a person. No matter how hard someone tries, it can be tested. It can be pressured, but it cannot be destroyed. And in a house full of people who confused privilege with power, it was the servants of Downton Abbey who proved time and again that real power was never about the title you were born with. It was about the person you chose to be when everything around you was designed to make you feel like nothing.